What's good? What's good? Shalom, shalom. What's up? What's up? Yeah, I know y'all see the title, right? We're going to get into the mighty brothers of the Maccabees, right? Our ancestors, because in a few months, couple months, we got something coming up called Black History Month, right? But a lot of our people don't understand that our history goes far beyond what happened to us here in America. We have ancient history amongst our people, right? And some of that ancient history goes back to our dear brothers, our dear ancestors, the Maccabees, right? That waged war against Alexander the Great, against his army, and won, right? And not too many nations can say that they went up against Alexander and this mighty army and won, right? So, because in school they teach you about Alexander, he's this great war general and all that stuff. And yeah, he took over the known world, right? But they don't teach you about the Hasmonean dynasty in schools, right? They teach you about every other type of civilization and emperors and rulers, but they don't teach about our people, the Hasmonean dynasties, right? They don't teach about none of that fought against, the Greek army and was able to, fight a good fight and push those people off, thus creating this holiday that we call Feast of Dedication, aka Feast of Lights, aka what is known now as Hanukkah, right? Even though those people with the little curly stuff hanging from the side and the saucer sitting on top of their hat stole it from us, our history. But this is ours, right? A kingdom of black and brown strong people that was ruling in sovereignty, right? So we're gonna get a little bit into the Maccabean story, right? And we covered this last year around this time, around the Feast of Dedications. So so like I said, we're gonna get back into it. So without further ado, of course, all praises call Allah, Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. That is all praises to the Most High God and His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shah, who the world calls Jesus, right? So let's get right up into it. We're gonna start with first, because like I said, we gotta understand, our history, the history of our people, the mighty warriors we had amongst our people, right? And honor them, right, for their great sacrifices that they have done, right? So for a lot of our people, man, they, we be so stuck in our own little world, what I'm saying? We, have this evil eye towards each other. A lot of us have a hard time understanding that our people were great, So, we're going to start off with Matthew first. Let's get Matthew 13 and 15. It says, "For this people heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing." And that's what happened to a lot of our people. Our people don't want to educate themselves. Our people don't want to, learn something, right? Like if you try to, inform our people like how great we were, that we were not just a bunch of, niggas, we had mighty empires that we ruled, like all the good things that we accomplished throughout the ages of time. A lot of our people can't fathom that because they so caught up into this modern culture that we got going on that is very detriment to our well-being, so we can't see past that, right? So it says, for this people heart is waxed gross, and their hearts are dull of hearing. I'm sorry, and their ears are dull of hearing. Meaning our people don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to, you know, they can't fathom the truth. Our people like to hear fantasies. You know what I'm saying? Like fantasies is more, appealing than lies to our people, right? So, like I said, we gotta, not be like that, right? So it says, and their eyes have closed, and lest at any time should see with their eyes, and their ears, which their ears should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them, right? So when you get into this whole thing contextually, it's talking about how God had put blinders on a lot of our people, so they don't understand His knowledge, so they don't understand His wisdom, right? And like I said, so we have to. So for those of us that do understand His wisdom, it's a blessing, because that means the Most High God, Yahweh, is putting the Spirit on you to allow you to understand what's going on here. But a lot of our people, like a friend of mine asked me a couple of days ago, about this whole thing when I be teaching these lessons. And, they thought like, am I going crazy? Like, what type of drugs I'm on? Like, what's wrong with me, right? But that's because this is the truth is strange to our people, because we've been lied to so long that whenever we're presented with the truth, it sounds very strange to us. It sounds very strange to our ears. So a lot of people can't ascertain the truth, can't understand the knowledge. And it's not a knock on them, because I understand this is a lot of people first time hearing stuff like this, right? Because the way that the scriptures, the Bible has been taught to us has been taught wrong, and we just been forced to accept it because we didn't have the knowledge and the wherewithal how to fully understand it. We just have to take whatever pastor and them said to us, right? That's what caused a lot of us to just leave out the church, because we knew that it had to be something more than that, and it's that it was just straight bull that we was learning. So now that we're coming back to our culture and understanding the truth of the matter, we're getting the clear understanding of this Bible, of our culture, our book, right? So it says, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their hearts, and should understand with their should hear with their ears, and should understand with their hearts, and should be converted, and I should heal them, right? And it says, blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. So like I said, the people that understand this wisdom, this knowledge, Yahweh Shai, Jesus said, blessed are your ears and your eyes, because you can see and you can understand what you're hearing and what you're seeing and what's going on, right? And that's important. Like I was telling another friend of mine that, that understand this, that's, getting to understand it. I'm like, the fact that you can pick it up, that means the Most High God is dealing with you, putting a spirit on you so you can understand. So you want to build on that, right? That's the whole thing. You want to build. Then it says, for verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see. So like I said, this is important because we living in the last days. We living when a lot of the stuff that the prophets had prophesied about is actually coming to pass in these days, right? So, and a lot of them wish they can see this stuff happening because they were ridiculed. They were, called crazy. They were beaten up. They were put in jail. They was ostracized when they was telling the truth. But now the stuff that they were talking about is actually coming to fruition. So that's why it says, many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and hear those things which ye heard, and have not heard them. Right? Because a lot of the stuff is happening now. And that's why we're getting this, we're in that age where they call it the Great Awakening, the age of knowledge, you know what I'm saying? People is waking up, to the proper understanding of these things, right? So then, going back up to 15, it says, lest any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and should understand with their hearts and should be converted, I should heal them. So now this is important too, because God, called many. What it says, many are called, but few are chosen. So we're called as people, the Black, Hispanic, and Native American people. We're God's chosen. But He's only given this knowledge to a few select people. That's why it says, lest at any time they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, and should understand with their hearts and should be converted, and I should heal them. Meaning, if God gave this understanding to all the Israelites, then He's going to be forced to heal and convert everybody to the understanding. But He only wants a special group of people, right? He said He's going to reserve a remnant, of people that would not, bow down to this, society of, how things is being ran, right? So, we're hoping that we are part of that small remnant that understand these things, that won't bow down to this society, right? So let's get Psalms 77 and 6. Psalm 77 and 6 says, I call to remembrance a song in the night. So what is that song? That song is the law, statutes, and commandments, our heritage, our culture. We're calling to remember these things, right? Because that's what we have to do, remember our culture and our heritage. Then it says, I call to remember the song at night. I commune with my own heart, and my spirit made a diligent search, right? That's what we have to search out these things. It says, my spirit made diligent search, meaning we go into the history. We go into, the archaeology. We read the prophecies of this book, right? And we make a diligent search. We just don't take, we just don't take things at face value. We do the research, right? And that's what I tell people all the time too. When you read in the Bible, you have to have a somewhat of a good understanding of history, so it can make sense. Because the Bible is highlighting key points in history. It's primarily dealing with the Israelites, of course. But it has some historical events that is, that help you understand what's going on during those times, But you got to understand how the Bible is written. It's not written word for word like you got a court stenographer that's typing everything you say. Sometimes you can read one verse and it'd be like so much history in that one verse, but they condensed it to that one verse. It could be like about 5-10 years worth of history all in that one verse that you just read. But if you're not familiar with the events that happen throughout time, then you're going to be confused, right? So you have to have a understanding and be kind of, somewhat well learned in history also, right? So then it says, I call to remembrance my song at night, and I commune with my own heart, and my spirit made diligent search. Will Yahweh cast off forever, and will He be favorable no more? Meaning will God not, be merciful to His people anymore? But of course not. Because He said we His people forever until heaven and earth, pass away. We always gonna be His people, right? Then it says, have Yahweh forgotten to be gracious? Have He in anger shut up His tender mercy? Shalom. And I said, this is my infirmity, but I will remember the years of nights, remember the years of the right hand of the Most High, right? So what did that mean? Remember the right hand of the Most High. Remember the good things that when God blessed you and took you out of whatever situation you was going through. Remember those times, right? You know, 'cause a lot of times we be going through so much hell in our lives that that's all we focus on, but we don't remember the good things that happen, right? Because like Job, like in the book of Job, it says, should I only receive good from Yahweh and not bad, right? So we got to be able, and the Bible says whenever you're going through adversity or hard times, you take it with gladness. You know, don't be someone complaining about how down you is, you know what I'm saying, when you can actually do something about it, right? So it's talking about remember the right hand of the Most High God, right? Remember the good things that He done for you. Remember the blessings. Because if you only focus on, if you're only focusing on all the bad things that happen, you know, so that's going to drown out all the good things that you know that took place, right? And it says, I will remember the works of the Lord, surely. I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also of all the works and talk of my doings. Thy way, O God, is the sanctuary. Who is so great as God, Yahweh, our power, right? So there's nobody greater than our God, right? So we gotta quit, you know, getting all bent out of shape when certain things take place, because God is not so far away that He can't save, right? That He can't help you out of whatever situation that you're going through, right? So that's why we have to remember the right hand of God, right? Okay, one more. Deuteronomy 6 and 4 says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. There's one Lord, one Yahweh, right? So it says, And thou shalt love Yahweh thy power with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might, right? So, and that's the thing, we gotta understand that it's nobody like our God. You know, our God is one, you know, one of one, right? And He's mighty to save, like it tells you, right? So let's get right up into it, though. So we got a lot to cover. We're not going to go somewhat word for word through everything. Because we're going to, you know, pretty much spend this whole week trying to go over it, right? So let's start with 1 Maccabees chapter 1 and 1, right? So this is 1 Maccabees 1 and 1. And it says, And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian. But this is talking about Alexander the Great. It says, the Macedonian who came out of the land of Chittim and smitten Darius of the Persians and the Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece. So Alexander put the white folks on, right? You know what I'm saying? You know that song with Jeezy, I put on for my city. And, you know, they teach you in school that the start of civilization came with Alexander, when we had all these great empires before that, right? You know, so, you know, that was the narrative in school that they was pushing. I don't know if they're still doing that the start of civilization started with Alexander, when this guy was a fervent freak, you know, and this all-around disgusting human being, right? But anywho, that's just their nature, period, right? So it says, let's get Daniel real quick. Jump to Daniel. But like I said, Daniel prophesied about all these different nations that came about, and he prophesies about the Greeks, right? So this is why we got to understand these different chapters, because, you know, when you get into the New Testament, you're reading about the Romans and the Greeks and all that stuff, but then it's primarily the Romans that is occupying Israel during that time. But you hear Greek stuff. And in church, they don't give no explanation where the Greek stuff come from, but we're talking about Romans. That's because the church, the Catholic Church, Martin Luther and his cronies, they took out the book of Apocrypha, you know, during that time, because the Apocrypha books gave up too much history of those so-called Europeans, those so-called white people that, gave up too much of their history and how their influence on the world, right? And how everything became corrupt through them. So they have to take that out. If they're going to try to perpetrate themselves as this benevolent people, as, these, people that's near to God, they have to take out the part of the Bible that talks about how these people are the vile of the earth, right? So they took out a lot of this history, right? So then if they, so then also, like we were speaking on earlier about the Hasmonean dynasty being ran by the Maccabees brothers, right? They would have to admit that this Greek society that was created through Alexander, that, in the history books, got them as, so mighty. I mean, of course, they did their thing. But then they would have to admit that they got their ass kicked by us, by some niggers. So then if you teach them that, then you're going to give empowerment to a group of people that you don't want to empower, that you want to push your ideology on, that you want to push your philosophies on. So then if you actually tell them that, hey, your people stood toe to toe against the mightiest army at that time and won, that's going to give us, that's going to create a lot of Malcolm X's, a lot of Martin Luther Kings, a lot of Marcus Garveys, a lot of Huey Newtons, right? A lot of, what's the other brother name? Fred Hamptons, right? So they couldn't do that. So they have to take all this stuff out, right? That's why they stopped teaching the Bible in school. And it's interesting that around the same time they start segregating the schools is the same time they took the Bibles out of school, right? Because they would have to teach us how great of a people we were, all right? So, moving on. This is Daniel chapter 7, verse 2. And Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision and by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And four beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. So it's talking about these different empires that came into rulership, right? It says the first was like a lion and an eagle, and had eagle wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up on the earth, and made a stand upon the feet of as a man, and did feet of a man, and man's heart was given to it, right? So it's talking about the Babylonians, right? Being a mighty empire, right? And it says, behold, another beast, a second beast, like a bear. No, my bad. It's talking about the Persian Empire that took out the Babylonians, because Daniel was in the Babylonian captivity at this point. So it says, and behold, another beast, a second like a bear, and rise up itself on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth, and between its teeth, and they said thus unto it, arise and devour much flesh. So this talking about I believe the Greek Empire, because the Greek Empire took out the Persians, the Lydians, in Egypt, right? So those are those 3 ribs that's in his mouth, right? So that's why I say it's important to understand history, so you can, when these prophecies come, you can understand it better, right? It says, after this I saw a night vision, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong, exceedingly mighty, and had great iron teeth, and devoured and break in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns. So this is talking about the Roman Empire. It had 10 horns, right? Well, I read too far, but yeah. So like I said, so I just read 6 again. So it says, after this I behold, and lo, it was like a leopard, a which had upon the back the 4 wings of a fowl. So now this is talking about Alexander, right? And the Greeks right here. It says, after this I beheld, and lo, like a leopard which had upon the back of 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given unto it. So it's talking about Alexander and his 4 generals. Because when you get into the history of Alexander and his 4 generals, when Alexander, before Alexander died, we're going to get into it, he split up the kingdom to his 4 generals, and they had the all respective areas that they were ruling in, right? So let's get so back to Maccabees, right? So back to Maccabees, and let's read. So it says, and it happened after Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim and had smitten Darius of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead first over Greece, right? So, and Chittim is an ancient way of saying Greece, right? So it says, sometimes they just say Greece, or sometimes they say Chittim, right? So it says, and made many wars, and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. So we know the history of Alexander. He came and conquered. He did all that, right? Then it says, he gathered a mighty strong host. Hold on. And he went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations. Took spoils of many nations, and kings who became tributaries unto him. Meaning, he made the other nations, after he defeated them, he made them pay taxes, right? Made them pay tribute to him, right? So taxes is part of slavery. So as people think you got to have a chain around your neck, shackles on you, getting beat with a whip to be a slave. No, slavery is paying taxes, right? In the ancient world, they understood that. At one point in time, America understood that. That's why they went to war with Britain to declare their independence. Then what they do, turn around and tax, and end up taxing their own people, right? So, so America's so wicked, they tax their own citizens. And what I mean by their own citizens, I'm talking about, their own Caucasian people, right? So the government made everybody slaves, right? But so that's how wicked these people are. It says, and the nations and kings who became tributaries unto him, right? So that's what they did, made them pay taxes. Either get down or lay down. And after these things, he felt sick and perceived that he should die. Therefore he called his servants, such were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he yet was alive. So like we read in Daniel about those 4 wings that was on the back of the leopard, it's talking about these 4 different generals and how eventually they all had, got their prospected land of allotment to rule, right? And it says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare ruled every one of them in his place. So, like I said, they took over certain territories and they ruled there, right? And and that's how they got down. Let's go back to Daniel. Let's get Daniel 8:8. And it says, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up 4 notable ones towards the 4th winds of heaven. Right? So talking about Alexander dying and his 4 generals, right? Because this is parabolical, right? Because this is a vision that he's seeing. Then it says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn which waxed exceedingly great towards the south and towards the east and towards the present land, right? So this is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, right? That bastard, that one that, we end up going to war with, right? And he was like probably one of the worst of the worst, and let's jump up to chapter 11 and 21 real quick. And it says, and in his estate shall stand up a vile person. This is talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, to whom they shall not give honor of a king, but he shall come and peacefully and obtain the kingdom by flattery. So that's how Antiochus became king, because he wasn't next in line to become ruler, right? He came because he was a captive to the Roman army, to the Roman government. But then after a while, through his different ways, whatever, the Romans appointed him, ruler over, what we'll call the Palestine area, the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent area. So he became ruler over that area, right? So that's why it says, and his estate shall stand up a vile person whom they shall not give honor of the kingdom, meaning he wasn't next in line to be king. He stole it. He got it by trickery. Then it says, but he shall come in peaceful and obtain the kingdom by flattery. And that's what he did. That's how he became in power, right? So let's get back to Maccabees. So then it says, and his servants bare rule every one of them in their place. And after his death, they put crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them in many years, and evil multiplied on the earth. We read this verse sometime when we getting on these people, right? When we talking about the so-called Caucasian, the so-called white man, and his peoples. We read this verse. So the Bible is telling, this is one of the main reasons why they took this book out of the Bible, because it tells you once they became rulers, evil multiplied on the earth, right? And we see how the state of the world is in now that they're ruling. How, everywhere you go is this wickedness all over the place. So that's what happens when these people are in rulership. It says, and evil multiplied on the earth, right? And so this is the main reason why they took this part out of the Bible, because it will let you know that whenever these people are in power, that triples and quadruples the evils that's already going on the earth, because they're down with anything. You see all the different laws they passing. They're down with any and everything, right? So it says, matter of fact, let's get Proverbs real quick. Boom. Proverbs 29 and 16 real quick. Boom. So then it says, and when the wicked multiply, transgressions increase. Right? So that's what happens when the wicked multiply, transgressions increase. This is what we're reading in Maccabees. Right? It says, when the wicked multiply, transgressions increase. But the righteous shall see their fall. And that's the thing. We hope that we live long enough to see the fall of this wicked empire called America and all their cronies, right? Because it says the righteous will see their fall, right? All right, back to Maccabees. So it says, after his death, they put crowns upon themselves, so that their sons after them in many years, and evil multiplied on the earth. So we understood whenever these people are in power, evil multiplies on the earth. Then it says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname of Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 130 and 72 years of the kingdom of Greeks, right? So now this bastard coming to power, right? This evil guy. So it says, in those days went out of Israel wicked men. So what did that mean? We always had some Uncle Tom, some traitors, some people that just love to betray their people and go against the greater good of their people to try to save themselves, like a lot of these celebrities and these pastors do today, right? It says, in those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuade many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around about us, for since we departed from them we had much sorrow. So we have people that think that we can't do anything without white people. You know, you have people like that. You have people think, well, you know, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, but we're going to need white people to do this and do that. No, we don't. You know what I'm saying? We don't need them to do it. Nothing but leave us alone, right? Because when we got out of slavery, you know how many great cities and towns and stuff we built, you know, this fresh out of slavery, right? You know what I'm saying? So we proved that we don't need them, right? You know how many times the black dollar used to circulate in our cities amongst ourselves, you know, before it left out of our community, right? So we proved that we don't need them. It's just that you have a small percentage of our people that think we need their permission to do something, that think we need the white man permission to do something to be great. You know, we got to have their blessing on this. We got to do this. No, we don't. So even back then, our people thought that way. It says, in those days went out of Israel wicked men. And the Bible calls those people wicked for thinking that, thought that you need these people to do anything. All we need is the Most High God, Yahweh. That's all we need, right? Faith in Yahweh and keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. That's what we need. Not the grace and permission of these people, right? These Edomites, right? And it says, in those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuade many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around about us, for since we departed from them, we have much sorrow. So they talking about like, man, you know, since we stopped dealing with those heathen people, man, it's been rough, man. Just go back, you know, you see, can we strike a deal with these people, right? Instead of wanting to stand on their own 2 feet, like boom, and do their own thing, right? That's what type of people we was dealing with. So it says, let's get Leviticus really quick. Okay, Leviticus 26 and 15. And it says, and if ye shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhors my judgment, and that's what a lot of people do. You know, you try to tell the people about God, try to tell people the truth about God, not just not Christianity about God, but the truth of God. Our people still abhor it. You know, they don't want to know. They hate the word of God, right? You can tell somebody that go to church every single day that they can. You know, and try and show them something in the Bible. They can see that it's written in the Bible, but then they be like, nah, I don't believe that. And you know this person go to church all the time and they claim they believe in Jesus. That's how messed up Christianity is for our people, right? That it teaches you not to believe what the Bible says. Because that's all we're doing is just reading the Bible, right? And it says, and if ye despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that ye will not do my commandments, but ye are breaking my covenant, right? And that's what we were given. We was given a covenant to follow. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Then it says, I also will do this to you. I will even appoint over you terror, right? So we read that over here in Maccabees that our ancestors like, man, you know, since we departed from dealing with these other nations and, you know, it's been kind of rough on us. No, nigga, since we departed from God and stopped following his laws and statutes, commandments, it's been rough for us. Because God says, What he say? He says, I will also do this to you. I will even appoint terror, consumption, and burning anguish that shall consume thy eyes and cause sorrow of heart, and ye shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. Right? Meaning, because the Bible calls God the King of terrors, right? Because God know how to get you. Like I said, that's speaking about giving you poor eyesight, right? It says, consume your eyes, cause sorrow of heart. Because how many people, just have a broken heart for whatever reason, whether it's just you fall on hard times, whatever, just you have a contrite heart, meaning you just in a bad mood, just feel depressed, right? So it's different things that God can do to punish us, to whip us back in shape, whether it's something that affects us mentally, or physically, like our health or whatever the case may be, right? So he says, and I will set my face against you, and ye shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you. And that's what's happening right now. The people that hate us is ruling over us. And we know they hate us because they showed us they hate us for the last 400 something years. Right? We know these things. Right? And anybody that think is different is like brainwashed. To think that these people actually have your greater good in mind. Because if they had your greater good in mind, they would have been rectified the things that they did to us. Instead of, just giving us an illusion of things, making us feel an illusion of gain, and all that stuff, right? We shouldn't still have to be in the streets marching for justice, 60 something years later still, right? Or, longer than that, because after, they released us from the plantation, it should have been immediate rectifying going on, but it wasn't. Instead, they passed laws that keep us further, indoctrinated and mentally in prison, right? Then they actually built more prisons for us, and they got the 13th Amendment that says if you commit any type of crime, you basically a slave again, right? So they have not fixed what they did to us. Right? And a lot of us say, well, we got to forgive them and all that stuff. Yeah, okay, cool. Right? You want to forgive people. But these people never apologize. They never apologize. And they never ask for forgiveness. That's crazy, right? If somebody did something wrong to you and then they being pompous about it, you're going to feel some type of way about it. You're not going to be like, all right, we gotta forgive them. No, because if they're walking around like, yeah, I did it, so what? You know what I'm saying? You're gonna have a different attitude about it. But a lot of our people have been taught and felt like that you need to, just forget about it. But they don't even, lead you to believe that they're sorry for what they did. Because when somebody is sorry for something, they rectify the situation, right? So, where we at with it? It says, they that hate you shall reign over you, and ye shall flee when none is pursuing you, right? And that's what's happening to our people, you know what I'm saying? Like, when we at work, you know what I'm saying, we see the white man walk up, we stop talking, or, see the police coming, we ain't doing nothing, but we want to, separate and walk away. Right? A lot of times, a lot of this stuff happen, right? Let's go to Job really quick. Job 19 and 29. It says, be ye afraid of the sword, right? For the wrath bringeth punishment of the sword, that ye may know that know there is a judgment. And who is the sword of the Lord? The sword of the Lord is the so-called white man. Chiefly the so-called Europeans. It can also be these other nations, but the so-called Europeans. So whenever God said he's going to bring a sword against us, he's talking about he's going to bring these other nations against us to destroy us, right? And chiefly these so-called Europeans. It says, be ye afraid of the sword, For wrath bringeth the punishment of the sword, that ye may know that there is judgment, right? Let's get Psalms real quick. Psalms 17 and 13. It says, Arise, O Lord, and disappoint him. Cast him down. Deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. Right? And we know who the wicked is. The wicked is these people, the so-called European. That's who the Bible calls the wicked, and we can prove it. That they call them the wicked. And we just read in Maccabees 1 and 9 that when they took over the earth and ruling these things, evil multiplied on the earth. So they are the wicked. Just one little verse real quick. Because we know history, right? We know what's going on, right? It says this. It says, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. And we know who's controlled things. We know what country goes around the whole world policing everybody. And if they don't want to do what they want to do, they blow them up. We know who do these things. So it says, the earth is given to the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges. How did he cover the faces of the judges? By showing you a white Jesus, white Moses, white disciples. Every time they make a movie, is white, right? So he's covering the faces of the judges. Right? And who's the judges? The Israelites are the judges. And he says, the earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? Meaning, if these people are not the wicked, if these people are not going around painting a white Jesus and propagating that all around, who else is doing that? Nobody else goes around the world presenting to you these images of the Bible other than these people, and they're counter to what the Bible actually describes these people as. So they cover in the faces of the judges. And the Bible says, if they're not wicked, then show me who's doing these things. That's what basically it says. It says, if not, where, then who is he? Meaning, if they're not wicked, then who is the wicked then? So we know who the wicked is. So when David says, deliver me from your sword, the wicked, right? That's who the wicked is, right? So it says, let's go back to Maccabees. Let's go back to Maccabees, right? Start at 12. So it says, so this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward, and herein they went to the king, who gave them license to do after their ordinance of the heathen. So what does that mean? They went to the white man and got grants to further, because like we just read about how wicked men of our people, right, went into these different they wanted to join with the Greeks. They wanted to join with Alexander, right? So then what they do, they went to Antiochus and, for they can get grant money so they can do it, right? Let's see what they did, right? Hold on one second. One second. So lucky. Like this. There we go. So yeah, right. Turn this off. So yeah, right. So it's lucky. So like I said, because it says it started back at 11. In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, "Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around excuse me, around about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." So this device pleased them well. Then certain people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who is Antiochus, and gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. And thereupon they built places of exercise in Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. So what's the customs of the heathen? You know, because the Greeks, they had these gymnasiums, these, where people go to work out at. And how did the Greeks work out? Who knows how the Greek people worked out, right? They worked out butt naked. That's how they worked out. And it's amazing when you go to these facilities and stuff. You see, especially, I don't know how it is in the women's locker room, but you got old white men sitting around naked. You know what I'm saying? It's nasty, right? Then you on the floor, people walking around like, with the least clothes as possible. Working out. Tight clothes and all that stuff, right? Showing their figure. But in the ancient days, they was just flat out naked. You know what I'm saying? Working out. Because that's how the white people do it. White people, their customs, the Greco-Roman stuff was all about wrestling naked. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they did. They wrestled naked. That's crazy, right? But a lot of our people, we follow these customs. Not to say that you can't work out or nothing like that, or go to these little fitness gyms or whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Don't do like how the heathens do, because the heathens like to do things naked. You know what I'm saying? They the one that started the nude beach stuff, right? That wasn't a concept that we came up with, but that's what they came up with because they're freaks, right? Let's keep going. Then it says, whereupon they built places of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. Because that wasn't our custom to build these big old fancy workout spots where we go there and naked and work out and wrestle. That's crazy, right? We didn't do those things. Then it says boom, boom, boom. Then it says whereupon they built, okay, I read that. And made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief, right? So, and this is an important part right here, because when you get into the New Testament, they're talking about the Gentiles, neither Jew or Greek or nothing like that. This is what it's talking about, because our people start taking on these customs of the Greeks, so they were being called Greeks, right? So when you get to the New Testament and they like, so cause a lot of people, because then if you want to take that literal, because people are like, well, it says no Jew or Greek, right? So then what about everybody else? Because not everybody is Jews or Greeks. You have different nationalities on this planet. So even if you want to say neither Jew or Greek, so you're still excluding like billions of other people. So it wasn't talking about that. It was talking about our Israelite brothers and sisters that decided to take on the customs and fashions of the Greek culture. Like we're reading here, we're reading the beginning of this. Because this history right here is before the New Testament. Before you open up the book and see the book of Matthew. We're reading what happened before that, right? So it says, and they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. Now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominant dominion over the two realms. So Antiochus was a greedy guy, right? You know, because we read how Alexander divided the empire amongst his four generals, gave them their own little respective areas to rule. But this guy Antiochus, he wanted the land of Egypt and North Africa also, right? Along with Mesopotamia and Palestine, right? So then it says, therefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy. And it says, with a great navy, boom, 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 boom. And he made war against Ptolemy, the king of Egypt, but Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death, right? So, like I said, but if you know the history, like he was trying to get at Egypt, long before, there's going back and forth, with the power thing. So, Ptolemy and them, they will win. Then some years later, Antiochus and his people would win, you know what I'm saying? But, so it was going back and forth, right? So Ptolemy, like, man, I'm up out of here, so he fled and ran, right? And it says, like I said, this is history. This is all documented history that we can go through outside of the Bible. So this is how we know that the Bible, the accuracy of the Bible, because it lines up with history. Archaeologists, scholars would tell you that the Bible is 98% accurate when it comes to recalling historical events. Whenever there's a missing link in history, they always refer to the Bible to fit it in. You know what I'm saying? To see how, see the account of it, right? Because think about this. The fact that we think about Egypt or Babylon or any of these other, ancient civilizations is because what was mentioned about it in the Bible. Then after they start doing their research and archaeology, start digging in certain areas, then they found the proof that matches up with the Bible. Then they start finding other artifacts that go along with it. So, so this is provable stuff, right? So then it says, and thus they got strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he turned again in the 140 and third year, and went against Israel with Jerusalem with a great multitude. Right. So now, when you get into the history, right, of this, because like I said earlier, when you read the Bible, sometimes it's so much history in just one verse. It's not going to give you accounts word for word. So now, that's why I was telling you, when you get into the history of Ptolemy and Antiochus, they was going back and forth, back and forth. So we didn't read about the back and forth right here. We just read about that one account that Ptolemy ran away. But now, when it says he went and returned, and it says he went up against Israel with a great multitude. So now he's making war with us, right? So now what happened was, it was this Roman general, this Roman politician. You can Google this. It's called the circle in the sand. This is Google. This is stuff that you can research. So I'm not telling you stuff that you can't research. It's called the circle in the sand. So this Roman politician general guy, you know, saw Antiochus and just basically drew a circle around his whole encampment and was like, look, if y'all niggas leave out of this circle, it's on and popping. It's gonna be some stuff that you don't really want to see. It's gonna be some stuff that's gonna make it hard for you to smile. So Antiochus, he didn't want that smoke with that Roman dude. So instead of saying, all right, forget it, what it is, they turned around, then they end up making war with us, right? He took it out on us, right? So let's see what this bastard did. Let's keep going. So then it says, And he entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick. What is this right here? The candlesticks. But the menorah was big as hell. I mean, it's down there, probably covered my room from one wall to the other wall. That's how big the menorah was that they took from us. It wasn't nothing like this. You know what I'm saying? It took about, when you see the trying to think of the proper way of saying it, but basically they carved into stone the pictographs or whatever. I don't know if that's the right terminology for it, but they carve into stone. It shows you it's about a good 10 or so, 15 Negroes carrying the big old menorah out of our temple, right? So that's how big it was. It took like about 10 to 15 people to carry it, right? So it says, he entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlesticks of light and the vessels thereof. He took all of our gold, everything up out of there, right? And a lot of us, we believe that some of our stuff is sitting in the Vatican, in the basement of the Vatican, or maybe somewhere in the Buckingham Palace somewhere, because they didn't destroy it, they didn't melt it down, because the stuff that was in our temple is the most valuable stuff on the planet, right? You know what I'm saying? So they didn't melt it down or none of that stuff. They still got everything that they took from us, right? And one day they're going to have to give it back, right? So they still got everything they took from us, right? So then it says, and the table of showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and of the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all he pulled off. So they stole everything. They came to Jerusalem and hit a lick, right? And he took also the silver and gold and precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. So it stole everything. Then it says, and when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Because we know how these people talk, right? Then it says, therefore was there great mourning in Israel, in every place were they, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. And every king and every bridegroom took up a lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was heaviness. Meaning they killed all of our males, you know what I'm saying, to the point where, a lot of our women didn't have anybody to marry. Sort of like what they doing over there in the Middle East right now, killing whole villages of people, leaving women and children to fend for themselves. So the same thing. So they killed so many of our people. So a lot of our women didn't have men to marry, right? So it says the land was also moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute to the cities of Judea, who came into Jerusalem with a great multitude. And he spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. That's how these people come. They see you at work. Hi, buddy, how you doing, pal? Right? That's why, they speak to you with deceit. All along, they're thinking about how they can get rid of you, how they can rule over you, right? So it says, and he spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city. So meaning he came in high. That's the thing. That's where I tell our people all the time. We think because these people have no rhythm, they come off very bland. They talk so whatever way. They talk whatever the way that how we look. So we look at these people as they're not the most violent people on the planet. Like they don't have the highest body count amongst all the nations of the world. We know the history. We know everywhere they went, they slaughtered. Only reason why they not, just outright just slaughtering people now because they have dominion. They're king of the mountain right now, so they don't have to go around just being vicious how they naturally are because they already control it. They already subdue everything. So there's no need to just continue on doing it. When you already got control, just maintain what you got, right? So that's what happened. It says, uh, for when they gave him credence, meaning he came to us speaking all soft and cool, and making us believe everything was all good, that he come in peace. So then we softened up a little bit. We got a little loose with him. Then what happened? He fell suddenly on the city and smote every sword and destroyed much people of Israel. So as soon as he got us comfortable and weakened, they came in with the army and slaughtered us. And you can ask our Native American brothers. They know how that went down. The white man came to the shores of America. Oh, I'm hungry. I'm tired. I'm lost. Oh, God, feed me. So the Native Americans taught them how to live over here because we know the history. They were dying by the masses when they first came over here. But it was our Native American brothers that showed them how to live over here. Then what happened? They killed them. Then they called it Thanksgiving after they did it. This is the type of people that we're dealing with. But we, think because they can't dance, they're a little bit offbeat, you know what I'm saying? They don't cook their food properly. They use all the wrong seasonings or no seasoning at all. You know what I'm saying? They just come off very quirky, but we forget the violent nature of these people. That's what we forget when we look at all those other things. We forget the violent nature of these people. That's why the Bible says, never trust thy enemy, right? So, and just get that real quick. Because like I said, I don't want to just say stuff and don't prove what I say. Because because you got to understand, the Bible is not a universal book. That's what we've been tricked to think. We think this Bible is written for, this Bible is called FUBU, for us, by us, right? It's not for everybody. This book is only about the Israelites, right? And it's not about anyone else but the people of Israel. Only time we talk about anyone else is when we're dealing with them, like we're dealing with these Greeks right now. So they're the focal point. So it says, this is Ecclesiastes 12 and 10. Never trust thy enemy, for like iron rust, so is his wickedness. What did that mean? He can come, like we just read how he came all cool with them. Then once they got comfortable, the army swooped in on them before they even knew it. So it says, never trust thy enemy, for like iron rust, so is his wickedness. Meaning, over time, iron is going to rust, right? If you have some iron, some type of metal in your house, you leave it there long enough, it's going to get rust. No matter what you do to it, it's going to get rust. So these people, they're going to show you their wickedness, no matter how cool they might be. You know what I'm saying? Like, no matter, how friendly they might be. It's going to be a point in time where the real them is going to come out, right? Then it says, though he humble himself, like we just read in the Maccabees where he came there humbling himself. It says, though he humble himself, go crouching and take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass. So meaning when you understand this principle, that you're going to be able to see them clearly for who they really are. You know what I'm saying? So it says, though he humble himself and go crouching, take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not been altogether wiped away. Right? So you're going to understand, like, man, this guy is not all good. You know what I'm saying? He come and try to act like everything is cool, but this guy is not all good. Then it says, set him not by thee, lest he have overthrown thee. Like how we just read with our brothers in the Maccabees. That the people let dude come into amongst them. He's speaking, cool. He's walking around the countryside, you know what I'm saying, mingling with the people, everybody getting cool with him, like, this guy's cool. He's one of the cool white boys, right? But then it says, set him not by thee, because when he have overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at the right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therein. Right? So that's what happened to our brothers that we just read in Maccabees. They was chilling, relaxing. Let's go back to it. So it says, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city and smote every sore and destroyed much people of Israel. So that's what happened. Once he got everybody comfortable of him being there and was cool, they came in with the army and killed everybody. Let's get let's go back to Job 12 and 6. Blow this out real quick. It says 12 and 6. So it says, the tabernacles of the robbers. So who's the tabernacles of the robbers? These people that go around robbing, stealing, and killing everything, right? These people who got, all the ancient world's treasures sitting in their museums or in a house or in a basement somewhere. So it says, the tabernacle of the robbers prosper, and they have provoked God, are secure, and those are secure into those hands God bringeth abundantly. So it says they go around doing these things, and when they do these things, they provoking God to act, right? And he is going to act on them, And it says unto those hands God bring abundantly, right? So like I said, so these people, man, it says they're at the tabernacles of robbers. The tabernacles of robbers prosper, and they that provoke God are secure. Meaning they're proud. They think that they can just get away with these things, and that's how they live their life. They go around robbing and stealing and killing because they feel like there's nothing going to come about after it, right? Let's get Proverbs 26 and 25. And it says, he spake fair. When he speak fair, believe him not. For there are 7 abominations in his heart. And that's how these people are. Because, a lot of our people be thinking, oh, well, they, some of them ain't all bad. You know what I'm saying? They ain't, all bad. Now, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. Yeah, I'm cool with a few of them. I am. But I understand this principle that we just read. Never trust our enemy. Because the Bible does call them our enemy. Whether you like it, believe it, understand it or not. It says, then this one, it says, when he speak fair, believe him not, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. So God knows, because he created these people to do what they're doing. That's why we read earlier that he created them to be his sword, to punish the world whenever he wants to. That's why they go around the world doing what they do. Then it says, whose hatred is covered by deceit. Like we just read in Maccabees that he was speaking all these, flattering words to our people, but it was all deceit. As soon as they caught us lacking, they came through with the army, right? Then it says, whose hatred is covered by deceit, whose wickedness shall slew before the whole congregation, right? So that's how they get done. All right, let's get back to Maccabees really, really quick. Let's jump down to Maccabees 41, 1 and 41. All right. So now, like, cause we skipped a few verses. I mean, like I said, last year when we did this, we read it word for word, but we skipped a few verses. So back history, give you history, so you can be caught up on what's going on. So now they're trying to force us to to accept their customs, to to follow their ways, right? So they're trying to get our dear brother Mattathias to do a sacrifice to the temple of Zeus or Jupiter, right? Uh, well, not the temple, but the idol, because they put Jupiter or the statue of Zeus in our temple, and they were trying to get Mattathias to sacrifice it because Mattathias was a leader. So then, if he did it, then the people that follow him, they're gonna do it. So he's trying to coerce Mattathias to do these things, right? So let's get First Maccabees chapter 141. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his hold on. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that shall go and be with one people. Let me read it right. It says, moreover, Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, right? And that's the philosophy that this world pushed. They push that oneness, that allness, that we all should be one people, right? And let's see how God feel about that. Because a lot of us think like, yeah, we are the world, you know what I'm saying? Got that we are the world spirit. But let's see how what does God think about that we are the world spirit? Right? Let's go to Genesis 11 and 1. And it says, the whole earth was of one language and one speech. And that one language and that one speech was the Hebrew, in case you don't know. A lot of people, I was talking to somebody, who was talking about Aramaic comes before Hebrew. I'm like, how? When it wasn't even no such thing as an Aramaic or an Arab during this time. So it says, the whole earth was one language and one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, they found a plain of the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And this is right after the flood. So this is after the flood, so people is, coming together, right? And so, people is multiplying, coming together, right? So it says, and they said to one another, go and let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick and stone and slime, they for mortar, right? And they said, go let us build a city and a tower whose tops may reach the heavens, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad the face of the whole earth, right? So now this is important because, God wanted the people to be separate and scattered to their own perspective, different lands that he blessed them with, right? So, but then it's like, well, nah, let's build this, even like if we ever get scattered, let's build a central hub where we all know where we come from and who we are, one place of worship, right? So they was trying to, disobey what God wanted them to do, was to be scattered and live in their own perspective, own respective areas, right? So we can see that God wasn't down with the whole "we are the world" thing. God wanted everybody to be separate because God liked diversity. We think diversity is, everybody coming together, and then that's diversity. No, diversity is this person. They do what they do. That's their custom. That's their culture. This person, they do what they do. That's their culture. That's their culture that they do. And they're diverse to each other, right? There's nothing wrong with dealing with each other, on business and all that stuff, right? But God says, and they said to one another, let us go and make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And they said, go, let us build a city, a great tower whose top may reach unto the heavens, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. So meaning God's like, man, these people, man, they're not doing what I asked them to do. I told them to scatter. I gave different land allotments to these people, and all they want to do is just come together, you know, and it's because they, basically saying it's because they speak the same language, So it's what he did. He said, and it says, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men built. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Go, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another. So the Lord scattered them abroad hence upon the face of the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore, the name is called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the languages of the earth, and from hence the Lord scattered them abroad upon the face of the earth. So God wasn't down with that whole "we are the world" stuff that America tried to push, try to bring everybody together. And even America says that, but they're not even down with that. Even the book of Daniel, chapter 2, starting at verse 41, it tells you that America, they mingle themselves with men, the seed of man, but they do not clean together. Meaning, we have racism, we have discrimination amongst people, right? So even though America is this big old melting pot, we're not even living the whole "we are the world" thing. We look at like it on the surface, but when you get into this place, you see that it's very segregated on how it is. Yeah, we come together, we work together, we go to the same stores together, but this place is segregated, right? So they don't even really practice what they preach. So God is not about, "we are the world" thing. So let's get let's jump down to 15. Then it says Genesis 11 and 15. And Shelah lived after he begat Eber 400 years and 3, and begat sons and daughters. Right? So now Eber is where we get the name Hebrew from. A lot of people think, and Eber, means him of old, right? So that's where we get the word Hebrew from, right? Because the people that came out of Eber is what we would call the Hebrews. Because Abraham was a Hebrew. Isaac was a Hebrew. Jacob was a Hebrew. Then when Jacob had his sons, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel, so then we became the Hebrew Israelites, right? So let's jump down to, no, we keep reading. So then it says, Eber lived 430 years and begat Peleg. Now Peleg, Peleg means division. Because when you get into Peleg, it says that when he was born, that's when the earth was divided. So Peleg was born right during the time of Babel, when the earth was divided, right? When things got divided, and all that stuff, right? So let's get back to Maccabees. Then it says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his kingdom that all should be one people. And we just read and see how God wasn't with that, how he broke that up quickly. So then it says, and everyone should leave his laws, so that the heathen agree according to the commandments of the king. Many also of the Israelites consented to his religion. So the Bible's calling this one world stuff, this democracy type style of ruling a religion, right? That's what it's calling how these people get down. Then it says, and sacrifice unto idols and profane the Sabbath, right? So again, this goes back to how our people, when you start reading in the New Testament, how they were being called Greeks, because a lot of our people end up consenting and start following the Greek culture, so they stop living like, Israelites and start living like the Greeks. Just like how our people here in America, you know, they live like Americans. We do American stuff. We don't have a culture that we do amongst ourselves because our culture is American, right? That's why too sometimes, then we can see the difference when some, like Middle Eastern or Indian, East Indian people come over here a lot of times, some of the times, but not all the time. Some of them keep to their culture, and you can see it more prevalent in the older generation of their people, how they still keep their traditional clothing that they wear, and they still keep they food that they eat, because a lot of Hindus don't even eat American food. They still, they eat their own type of food, right? So, so yeah, so we can see how people can, get into the culture and all that stuff, right? And stop calling their own, stop living by their own standards and start following, the crowd. And that's what it said that we did. And it says, yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judea, and they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burning offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days. So that's what happened. They made it against the law for us to keep our customs and our religion, and how we want to practice and worship our God. They made it against the law. So that's how a lot of us, end up, becoming, becoming, Greeks and all that stuff, right? We start practicing, their way of life and left ours alone. Then it says, and polluted the sanctuary and holy people, and set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrificed swine flesh and the unclean beast. That's what they did. Hold on. Bye. It's a lot. So, and that's what, they did. They, start, following their customs of things. So then it says, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manners of uncleanness and profanation, right? To the ends that they might forget the law and change all the ordinance. So that's what their hope was. So the Greeks, put in place these laws to make us not do our laws. So over time, our people will forget our customs and, how we do things. That's sort of like how America does it, like America, when they brought us over here off them slave ships, they stopped all that stuff that we was doing before they grabbed us, and we have to do what they told us to do, or else they would kill us. If they hear us speaking our own language, they would kill us. You know what I'm saying? You hear us, just doing anything other than what they think we should do, they will kill us, right? So that's the same thing that was going on back then. This is how we know we're dealing with the same type of people, right? Then it says, to the end that they might forget the laws and change all the ordinance. And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said, should die. right? And that's what happened. Then it says, in the self same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the city of Judea to sacrifice city by city. So they went by, they was forcing us to follow their Greek customs, sacrificing to their Greek gods, their Greek pantheons of gods that they had, right? And it says, then many of the people were gathered unto them to win every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evil in the land. So our people, being scared of the might of the army of them, of the Greeks, they went along with it, right? And it says, and drove the Israelites into secret places, even were so they could flee to succor, right? So a lot of our people didn't get down with it. So a lot of our people have to, just get up, escape, and they ran into the wilderness to try to get away from the madness because they wasn't going. You know what I'm saying? So then if they stayed around, they probably would have been killed. So they end up fleeing, leaving, right? Then it says, now the 15th day of the month of Cashew, in the 140 and 50th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and built idols, built idol altars throughout the city of Judea on every side. Right. So the abomination of desolation, we read about this in Daniel. So what's the abomination of desolation? That's when they set up the statue of Jupiter, better known as Zeus, in the temple of God, in our temple, right? They destroyed everything that we had in our temple, and they set up Zeus, right? And put Zeus up in there and made us, worship that, right? Then it says, so that's the abomination and desolation. Because a lot of people will, especially when you see it in Daniel and how the church teach it, that it's going to be this Antichrist guy that's going to be real charismatic, that's going to come in the end of the days, and he's going to walk into the temple and then force everybody to, number one, we see what's going on over there in the Middle East right now. So where's this charismatic Arab man that's supposed to come and, and flatter the whole world and all that stuff? So no, that's a lie. We reading what the abomination of desolation is now. Is when they put the statue of Zeus or Jupiter. Same thing. The Romans call him Jupiter. The Greeks call him Zeus. So it says, and burn incense at the doors of their houses and streets, and when they had rent in places the books of the law that they found, they burnt them with fire. So now this is interesting too. So they burnt all of our holy books, all of our, they burnt, they burnt our stuff, right? And so, like I said, this is important to note because especially when you get into studying the Bible and seeing how the Bible was put together. So a lot of people say, well, the oldest Bible go back to, like 300 something BC or something like that, right? Or, during the Greek time. And it's interesting that it says that the oldest Bible goes back to the Greek time because this is when our books got burnt because we have to rewrite them. When you get into the prophet Esdras, God used Esdras to rewrite the scriptures again, right? So, so when people say, well, the Bible is not that old, so obviously our scriptures is old because during the time of the Greeks were doing a thing, we already had our holy scrolls in our scriptures, right? And it says, and when they had rent the places, rent in pieces the books of the law, and they found, they burnt them with fire. So they burnt all of our stuff. So when people, was talking to this young lady the other day, And basically she was making the argument that certain things that she had learned is older than the Bible. But a lot of our people don't understand when was the Bibles burnt, then the reason why they're dated at the time that they're dated now, because Ezra lived during the Greek captivity. So when God told Ezra to rewrite the scriptures, right? So now, and him and a few other scribes, many other scribes, they rewrote our book for us, right? So that's why our book goes back to the Greek era, because that's where it had to restart at, because we're reading right here, the Greeks burnt our books. So when people say, well, you got the Greeks, like, the oldest, the one of the oldest is the Greek Septuagint and all that stuff, right? Yeah, duh, because our Hebrew books were burnt. So, and we're reading it now. Not to say that, because you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? Because the Dead Sea Scrolls, those was written in Hebrew and they was hidden. You got the Texas Sardonicus, or how you say it, and the Greek Septuagint. You know what I'm saying? The three reliable sources, that we understand. So that's what I'm saying. When you understand how the Bible is put together, then you know that that the Greek Septuagint, the Texas Sardonicus, or however you say it, I know I'm probably saying it wrong, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. So we can go back to those things and look at those documents. So this is how we understand the accuracy of the Bible. And when people say, well, the Bible been transmitted and changed, blah, blah, blah. No, it has not, because we still have the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Greek Septuagint, and the Texas Chronicles, or whatever, how you say it, right? So we understand that. And so we can check the accuracy and see what was actually written in the original manuscripts, right? And like I said, our dear brother Esdras, have to rewrite the scriptures, right? Rewrite the Old Testament for us. So just so happened that correspond with this time where it says how they burnt our books. Then it says, and whosoever was found with them, whosoever was found with any of the books of the testament, or if any committed to the law, the king's commandment, which was they should be put to death. So they burnt all of our books that they can find. Then if they found you with a book, they killed you. Just like how on a plantation, if they find you reading, they'll kill you or whatever, punish you, whatever they will do. Same people, same philosophy, right? Let's jump to chapter 2 real quick. Let's jump to chapter 2, Maccabees chapter 2, verse 1. In those days, Mattathias, the son of John and the son of Simon, a priest of the son of Jorebed from Jerusalem, dwelt in Madin, and he had 5 sons. Johanna called Claudius, and Simon called Thaddeus, and Judas, who was called Maccabees, and Eleazar, who was called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Apollos, right? So 5 mighty brothers. Okay, this is what this whole thing is all about right here, right? These 5 mighty brothers that fought against the Greeks and kicked their ass. The reason why they don't want to talk about it, right? Because they want to perpetrate like, the Greeks was just this unstoppable force. But our people came together and did their thing. And we was able to regain our land back, right? So let's get into it. So it says, boom, boom, boom. And it says, and he saw the blasphemy of that were committed in Judea and Jerusalem, and he said, woe is me, therefore was I born to see this misery of my people. Because he was upset to see the occupation of his people and how they was being coerced to, go against their culture go against their customs and start keeping these Greek customs and seeing the oppression that they was going through and facing, and and being killed in the streets, for this, right? And a lot of our people, man, we gotta have that same passion. You know what I'm saying? When we so want to be American so much, we want to, hold on to the philosophies of America. We want to, get rich and or die trying here in America. When our ancestors thought that was, like abominable. They hated the fact that they couldn't have the freedom to believe and do what they wanted to do. That they had to be forced to live a certain type of way. They hated it. That's why he says, "Woe is me, therefore I was born to see the misery of my people and of the holy city, and dwell therein, dwell there, when it was delivered unto the hands of the enemy, and the sanctuary unto strangers." And it says, "Her temple is become as a man without glory." So that's what happened when these Greeks took over our land. They went into our temple. They started putting their idols up in it. Like I said, they put Zeus and all that stuff. It's forcing people to sacrifice to it, right? Then it says, let's jump down to 17. Let's jump down to verse 17. And it says, "Then answered the king officers and said to Mattathias, On this wise thou art a ruler and a honorable and great man in the city, and strengthen is with the sons of brethren." So now, you got this officer of the king's army of Antiochus trying to provoke and persuade Mattathias to do a sacrifice so he can get the rest of the Israelites on board, right? So, and that's how Esau usually do. He attack our spiritual leaders. He attack, the leaders of our community to corrupt them first. That's why a lot of these church pastors are corrupt, because they done took in the bag. That's why they don't speak, on, black empowerment and all that stuff. They have to teach a certain type of doctrine so they can get that funding from the church, right? From the government, that 501c3, whatever how that stuff is, right? So that's how Esau does. He attack our spiritual leaders, attack our leaders first to get them corrupted, right? Because they know our people, we're very religious, and we will, so like I said, you get our spiritual leaders to go against, what they know is right, then they can influence the masses, right? So they know these things. So it says, and he answered the king's officer and said, answered the king's officer and said to Mattathias, On this wise thou art a ruler, a honorable and great man in the city, and strengthened with the sons and brethren. Now therefore, which come first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as the heathen has done, and the man of Judea also. So you're like, look, all the other nations that we conquered, they're doing it. Now, it's just your turn. You got to do it too, right? So, you be at the job, and the job trying to make you go against what you believe in doing. And be like, look, everybody else is signed on to it, so you might as well do it too, so just, be a part of the team, don't, so, that's how it is coming at him, trying to get him to do something that he knows that's against his own principles, right? So he says, therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as the heathen also done, and the men of Judea also, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so shall thou and thy house be in number of the king's friend. So he trying to bribe him, like, look, if you do this, the king you're gonna be like a friend to the king. You're gonna get all these different benefits, just like how our celebrities do now. Celebrities, sell their soul to try to, mislead the masses of our people, and then when they get to a certain point, then they, want to speak out about it. It's too late because the damage is already done, right? So it's the same thing we see here. This They got the same tricks that they've been using for ages. You know what I'm saying? Promise you all these riches and fame and glory, right? Just for you to do what they want you to do, right? And we see this happening, in the entertainment business, widespread. They do this type of stuff, right? And it says, therefore, come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathens have done, yeah, and all the men of Judea also, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so shall thou in the house of will be in number of the king's friends, and thou and the children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Right? So, like I said, it's hitting them with the bribery. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice through all the nations that are under the king's dominion, obey him and fall away, every one of them from the religion of their fathers, and give consent to his commandments. Yet I will, and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. So he's like, man, look, I don't care what these other nations is doing, how they're, dropping everything and doing what, Antiochus want them to do. But me, my sons, and my people, we ain't about that. We're going to do what God told us to do. Right? So that's what I'm saying. This is the history of our people. They stood boldly in the face of the oppressor for their God. But you have our people that's, will fold, quickly, like, that when they was threatening people, about their job a couple of years ago, about getting a shot. A lot of our people took the shot because they had to work, instead of telling them, no, I'm not taking that, shot because that's not what I want to do, But so you have to stand boldly in the face of the oppressor. That's what our people have to learn, right? And it says, and God forbid that we shall forsake the laws of the ordinance, and we will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, neither on the right hand or the left, meaning we ain't going to turn this way or that way. We stand straight on the path that God laid out for us, that our ancestors laid out for us, and we're going to keep our customs and our culture and our laws that we follow, right? That's what Mattathias is telling this officer of the king's army. Like, no, we ain't on that, right? And that's the type of tenacity and that we got to have, when we, facing these oppositions and all that stuff, right? Mattathias was a powerful man, and he raised his sons to be powerful men that stood up against, the oppression, right? So then it says, and now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all the an altar sacrifice on the altar, which was at Madad, according to the king's commandment. So here comes this little nigger, after Mattathias done preached this great, encouraging words, these powerful words, these defying words to the king, saying, no, we ain't doing none of that stuff, dude. Get up out of here with all of that. Said, our people, we ain't rolling like that, right? So here come this nigga out of the cut, this little Uncle Tom ass nigga, right? After Mattathias done preached this great sermon, how we don't fold, Now here come this dude, we got a lot of people like that amongst ourselves that, would literally, would go and kiss the white man's butt because they want to prove to the white man, I'm not like them, I'm different, I'm not like them, So you got people like that they want to have the approval of these people so much that they will go against their own people. So what it says, now when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was in Medan, according to the king's commandment, and which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, meaning this pissed him off so much When he saw, like, he just got done speaking this great ass speech, you know what I'm saying? Then here come this nigga out of the cut, getting ready to sacrifice some type of pig, you know, on the altar of God, knowing damn well that's not how we get down. This is like, and you can see I'm kind of getting a little upset talking about it too, because our people, we're so crazy. We'll go to church, right? Not that you should be going to church anyway, because the church is the devil. But, you know, but even if you go to church, so they have those little church dinners, and those church dinners be having ham, right? And then then the preacher or whoever, deacon, whatever, they want to stand and pray over the food. You know how sickening that is? You know, you got ham on your plate and you're going to pray over it and you think God is going to bless it? Of course he's not blessing it. That's why we got high blood pressure. That's why we suffer from gout. That's why we got all these type of heart diseases going on, because we're eating these type of foods that God told us not to eat. And we're so foolish, we think that just because pastor says it's okay to eat, we can eat it. But what did God say? God says don't eat it. God created your body. He knows what's going to make your body be efficient in operations. So eating certain type of foods is not going to make you operate at your, you know, top level or how you should be operating. It's going to kill you. And you know it's going to kill you because we see the studies. We see what happens to when we eat it. Nobody else suffered from these type of things like we suffer, right? I mean, sure, other people got diabetes, cool. But we get it at a higher rate. Why? Because God told us not to eat it. So that's his way of punishing us, you know, for, you know, getting gout, high blood pressure, hypertension, all that stuff, right? You know, certain groups of people, they can eat all that type of stuff and nothing happens to them. Look at those people over in Asia. Look at the stuff that they eat over in Asia. You know, as my mom used to say, they got a cast iron stomach. You know what I'm saying? Like, they eat all this stuff. And nothing happens to them. But let you start eating all that stuff. You're going to get sick than a dog, right? Because we're not made, God didn't make us to eat that stuff. And then, as a safety measure, when we do eat that stuff, God causes us to get sick more so than anybody else when we eat the same thing. Right? That's what you got to understand. So that's how you know we're not meant to eat these things. Right? And it says, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled. Right? Have you ever been so mad that you just be shaking? You don't know what to do. You're just so angry. You about to explode. You be shaking. You be trembling. That's how mad you is, right? You're just mad and just shaking, right? So it says, and he trembled, neither could he forbear, and slew his anger according to judgment. Therefore he ran and slew the man upon the altar. So Mattathias came and killed that guy right where he stood, right when he's getting ready to walk up to the altar. He killed him right on the altar of God, right? That's how angry he was, that this man was coming, about to go against his customs, his belief, all because the white man told him to. The white man being the Greeks, Antiochus, told him, hey, this is what we're doing now. If you don't do it, you got to get down and lay down. Then Mattathias like, no, nigga, we ain't doing that. You better go get your army, nigga, because we ain't going. So then this nigga come and, like, that's crazy. So Mattathias was so angry that he was shaking. He couldn't even calm himself down that he had to go kill this man. Just see what else happened. Then it says, he neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment. Therefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Also the king's commissioner, who compelled men to sacrifice. So not only did he kill, you know, the Israelite brother that was, you know, went against God's commandments and was about to sacrifice that pig on the altar, he killed the white man that asked him to do it, killed that officer that had everybody lined up and like, all right, look, this is what y'all gonna do. And either you're gonna do it or you're gonna die. Right? So then dude, he went and killed dude and the Antiochus officer that was, you know, making everybody do this thing. This is how angry he was. Then it says and also the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Thus dealt zealously for the laws of God, like Phinehas did unto Zebri, the son of uh, uh, Salam. So now when you get into that history, because like I said, this brother was a Levite. You know what I'm saying? Levites is what we'll call today the Haitians. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how the Levites was. You know, Levites was deadly like that. They don't care who you was. You know what I'm saying? You know, they don't care who you was. You know what I'm saying? You can be your mother, father, son, cousin, brother, friend. If you going against what God say, dude, the Levites was coming at you, right? They don't care who you were. You can be a close family member. That's why God chose the Levites to be His priests. Because when we was with Moses, and our people ended up building that golden calf, and they was worshiping it, then Moses came off the mountain. He was angry, and he was like, man, yo, hey, who's on the side of God? And the Levites was the first ones to stand up and put to death those Israelites that were dancing and sacrificing to that golden calf that they made in the desert when they was with Moses. So God like, all right, these gonna be my people. They gonna be my priests, right? So the Levites always had that type of hurt. Our Haitian brothers always had that hurt. Like, they don't care who you is. If you do something that they think is wrong, they ain't got no problem, getting a body off that, right? And we know that. That's why we be making jokes about, like, in songs and stuff about, not jokes, but having little songs, lyrics about having crazy Haitian niggas on our side, that, whatever. You know those songs, right? Can't think of any lyrics right now, but you know them songs. So it says, thus he dealt zealously for the law of God, like Phinehas did unto Zabri and the son of Salam. And Mattathias cried through the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous for the law and maintain the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled to the mountains and left all that ever they had in the city. So they, said forget all their stuff. They all ran to the mountains, right? And it says, then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness and dwelt there. So it got to a point where, like, so he was able to bring together a nice multitude of people to follow him, right? So because God was with them. So they ended up building a nice army, a nice formidable army to go against the Greeks. Even though the Greeks had a bigger army, but you got to understand how God works. God is not concerned with numbers. You know what I'm saying? People think they can win because they got the numbers. But God would take the least and destroy the greatest. That's how He works, right? Because that's how He brings glory to His name, by doing stuff like that, right? So let's get Hebrews really quick. Let's jump to Hebrews 11 and 23. And it says, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandments. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of the Pharaoh's daughter. So now Moses, so it's recapping the story of Moses. So Moses, he was raised as a prince of Egypt. You know what I'm saying? He had rank within the Egypt government, right? He was a prince, a general, right? But then he knew that his people, the Israelites, were enslaved. So he was willing to give up that life of privilege, being in a palace, to go live with his people and suffer with his people. And that's how we have to be. We have to have that same mentality. Like, man, I can't be straight unless we all is straight, but instead we have this attitude of, I got mine and you better get yours. You know what I'm saying? So it says, By faith, when Moses come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. So he like, man, I'd rather, instead of, living comfortably in his palace, I'd rather go be down there with my people. Because he was convicted. Because he's like, man, I'm living this type of life and my people ain't straight, right? So, he gave up his title of being the prince of Egypt and he went to go live with his people, right? Then, let's get, and that's how Mattathias was. Mattathias had that same spirit, like, man, look, I'm not, you know, my people, that's how they was able to gather that great army, so they can fight against the Greeks, right? So let's get back to Maccabees. Go to read 29. One more again. 2 and 29. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there. Right? So let's jump all the way down to 64. Right? Verse 64. Then it says, wherefore, ye sons that be vigilant and show yourself a man on the behalf of the law. So that's how Israel counted a person a man, that they kept the laws of God, right? Then you keep the laws of God. That's determine your manhood. Just like David told his son in the book of Psalms, show yourself a man and keep the charge of the Lord, right? But in this society, a man is judged on what he got in his bank account, right? What he can do for somebody and what he can't do for somebody. But here we see that a man is judged on how he keep the laws of God, how he keep the charge of God. That is what a man is, according to the Bible, one that keeps the laws of God, right? Of course, you're supposed to provide and protect for your family, of course, but that should not be the only thing that is centered around. It should be considered centered around if this man is a man of God, right? Does he keep the laws of God, right? Then it says, therefore, ye sons, be vigilant and show yourself a man on the behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain, for by it shall ye obtain glory. And behold, I know that your brother Simon is a man of counsel. Give ear to him away, and he shall be a father to you. So now he's, giving orders to his sons and putting them in their, respective position. Because, a parent know their different skills and different gifts that their children have. So he know that his son Simon, was a great planner, a great, um, man of wisdom. So he's like, all right, listen to him, what I'm saying? Because he got the game plan, right? He's like the quarterback, right? Then it says, and as for Judas, Maccabees, he has been a mighty and strong, and even from his youth up, let him be your captain and fight the battles of the people. So now he know that his son, Judas Maccabees, he's a strong warrior, got that strong mentality. So he like, look, so let Maccabees run this army thing. Simon is he's the quarterback. He's gonna, put the master plan, the plan together. Then it says, take also unto you all those that observe the law and avenge ye the wrong of your people, right? And that's what we did when we fought against the Greeks. That was for vengeance of our people, because when you know the history, they destroyed our land, they destroyed our temples, they destroyed our history, our books, all that, right? So that we were able to defeat them, right? So it says, boom, boom, boom. recompense fully the heathen and take heed to the commandments of the law. So he blessed them and was gathered to his father. So meaning, when before Mattathias died, he told his sons, look, this is how I want y'all to run this thing. I'm about to die. So listen to your brother Simon. Let your brother Judas, go ahead and handle the business on the war side. You know what I'm saying? But Judas, just, take heed to what Simon is telling you because he got the wisdom. Then he says, and he died in the 146th year, and his sons buried him in the sepulchre of his father of Modin, and all Israel made a great lamentation for him. Right. So yeah, that's what happens. You know what I'm saying? So we get into the beginning of this thing, right? We're gonna end it right there. I'll put that in your mouth. We're gonna end it right there, and put this in your mouth. You gotta charge it, okay? Charge the batteries. So so yeah, so we see how they formulating the army, getting everybody together. So we're gonna continue as next time. So we see, how our people stood fast on what they believe in, and they wasn't, um, just bowing down to, the oppression and of the Greeks that they was putting on them, following the laws that was counterproductive to what God, told them to do, right? So, like I said, so that's what they did. Hold on one second. Yeah, Sabaki, yeah. Oh, dang, hold on. But yeah, it's like it. So yeah, so like I said, so we see the mightiness of our ancestors, these brothers, man, how they was ready to stand on business, right? And they wasn't going, right? So like I said, we're gonna continue on in the Maccabees. We're gonna get into the whole war thing and all that stuff and how we was able to defeat the Greeks, take back our land, you know, and thus creating this great holiday that we're celebrating this week called the Feast of Dedication, better known as Hanukkah, Feast of Lights, right? So with that, I'm gonna say shalom, and hopefully that was edifying, and and we're getting a little understanding of our culture and how our people behave, right? How they felt about things and how they had that zeal for the Lord, how they was, willing to go against all odds so they can keep the laws of God. They didn't make excuses about not keeping the laws of God. They was, willing to fight and die for it, right? So, like I said, so we see the mightiness of these brothers. So, like I said, we're gonna say shalom, peace. Until next time.